Hey everyone, this is Mark Austin with So You Want the Truth About, and this is Truth to Lies. And in this video series, Truth to Lies, it's where I basically record my screen and just go over propaganda and explain why I think it's untruthful, why I think it's lies, and what the truth is instead. So we're going to do this today with a post from So You Want to Talk About that's titled The Hypocrisy of Pro-Life. And this post of theirs, I've seen this argument made in many forums, and it's always annoyed me. I know it's annoyed a ton of our viewers a lot. We've gotten a ton of requests for us to address this. So I'm just going to go through it slide by slide and dissect it. So here on their first slide, they say that the GOP calls themselves pro-life and that the Republican Party is proud to stand up for the rights of the unborn, and that we want to protect the unborn and abortion. And what they have to say about this is, well, the problem with this is not pro-life. This is just pro-birth. And something that the left's very good at, the left always does, that we always have to be aware of, is they always attempt to control the language. You know, the Bible talks about how the tongue can be more powerful than the sword. And the left really likes to use the weapon of the tongue. You know, it's not an illegal immigrant, it's an undocumented migrant, right? Why is that important to them? I mean, an illegal immigrant, that's the factual description of someone who immigrates illegally. It's the simplest term, but it's not a term that's advantageous to them politically. So undocumented migrant, someone who's just undocumented, that doesn't sound near as bad as illegal. So same thing with this issue. The left, pro-choice does not sound as good as pro-life, right? Pro-life is the stronger term, and they want to take that away from us. They want to say, no, we are the ones who are pro-life, not you. You're just pro-birth. And the insinuation is that we only care that the baby be born, and then we cease to care about them at all, which on its surface should seem a little ludicrous, because why would we care so much if the baby is born or not if we care nothing for them after that? It doesn't even really make sense, but that's the accusation being made. But really, it's not that it's a truthful accusation, and that's why this is propaganda. It's a tactical accusation. They want the term pro-life for themselves, and they don't want us to be able to use this term to advance our cause, because they know it's a powerful term to be able to use. So digging into this further, they ask, those who are pro-life support Medicare for all so that no one is left to suffer without access to health care, right? Unfortunately, no. The pro-life is staunchly against universal health care. And then a similar accusation, those who are pro-life would certainly support easy access to reproductive health care services, right? Oh no, they consistently fight to strip funding from healthcare providers like Planned Parenthood. So basically, they're insinuating here, if you care about people's lives, you must support left-wing policies. That's what this slide is saying. Because if you don't care about universal health care, you don't care about government propping up different service providers for specific services, then you must not care about people's livelihoods at all, which is obviously an absurd accusation. The reason the right is opposed to universal health care is not because we just don't want people to have health care, that we just want to sit back and we're the ones with money, we buy the health care we need, and look at all the poor people, they can't get health care. Like, if you really think that's what the right wing believes, you believe an absolute false caricature, and you're brainwashed. Half the country doesn't want to just laugh at people who don't have health care. The reason we don't want universal health care, in other words, universal provided by the government, is because we don't think that'll be good quality health care. We think it'll be a net negative for society. And look at everything that the government runs. Every institution it has control over. None of them are ran well, right? So the thought that the government is bad at running anything it has power over. Like, think about Obamacare, the website that launched when Obamacare started. It was a complete disaster. It couldn't field applications. It wouldn't work well. And then what did Obama brag about? He bragged about hiring private sector IT people to bring the website up to private sector speed. So in other words, the private sector speed was higher than the public sector speed out of Obama's own mouth. And that's just a small example, but it's related to healthcare. Just because we give the government authority to do something does not mean it will be done well. And people on the right think government-ran healthcare will be done worse than free market designed healthcare. And by the way, there's problems with free market healthcare. And if you go to our post, The Truth About Trump's Healthcare Plan, I talk about some of the free market initiatives he wanted. But, we need to do a post in the future about true right-wing free market reform, because a lot of the problems with our current healthcare system are because of the level of government intervention we already have in place that's not good. And there are some reforms that need to be made to actually allow the market to operate with healthcare. But the thought that we oppose universal healthcare because we don't care about people, that is absurd. We do care about people. And we think the left-wing way of trying to care for people will actually result in more people being worse off. Same thing with, the women's healthcare services. And by the way, there are lots of organizations that most right-wingers are okay with getting government funding that just don't provide abortion. So the thought that just because we don't want Planned Parenthood to get government money means we don't want women to have access to pap smears and breast exams, that is also just simply not true. But the vast majority of what Planned Parenthood does is abortions. These other services are a small part of what they do to try and justify to society why they need money. They won't say, oh, we can't commit as many abortions if we take away their money. They'll then talk about this other stuff. All right, so they're going to have similar accusations in all of these slides. So the next one, those who are pro-life certainly must support comprehensive sex education for the youth so as to avoid unwanted pregnancies, right? So, and then they say at the bottom, if someone truly cared about avoiding unwanted pregnancies, they'd be fighting for comprehensive sex education in every single state. So I think that comprehensive sex education, as it's done in our schools, goes beyond what most right-wing people think is good in terms of the values we should push. So I remember when I was in high school, and I'm 31 now, so it's not like I was in high school yesterday, so who knows what they're teaching today. But when I was in sex ed sophomore year, we had a video that was literally showing softcore porn. It was just two people having sex underneath bed sheets. And the guy was talking about how great it was to be sexually active, and you don't need to have abstinence. You can do abstinence, but he thinks a better choice is to be sexually active. And talk about one of the most awkward, weird moments of my life. You're sitting in a classroom with your peers and teachers, and you're watching a sex scene on TV, and that's what we need. The left can't be trusted. Think about gay rights, right? Oh, we just want to be respected. We just want to, have the same rights you do. And now the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir is saying about, we're coming after your children. We're going to recruit them. We're going to get them to agree with us and not with you. It was never just about, we want the same rights. The left has shown they can't be trusted. So to give the left control over sex education in our schools, probably these days involves teaching little kids about masturbation, about how anal sex is okay. All this stuff that our schools do not need to be teaching. Now, should we teach abstinence-only sex education? I think probably not, because we have to be aware of the fact that a lot of people are not going to do that. But it should probably be the focus in terms of all the benefits of waiting until you're married and why it's good and why it's counterintuitive and sharing things about people who can delay gratification. It's one of the number one correlations with success in life. So can you delay that sexual satisfaction? Because if you can delay it in that facet, you can probably delay it in other decision-making skills, and you're more likely to be successful, right? So we could teach about condoms. We could teach, here's things that can be done to reduce the transmission of sexually transmitted diseases, but abstinence shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be what is prioritize. So the thought that, once again, we don't care about this stuff is just, the left constantly does this. If you don't agree with us, then you don't care about the issue at all. There's no way the right wing just wants to do things a different way. They don't care about it at all. And I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase before, but it's reminded me of this, of the right thinks the left is misguided and the left thinks the right is evil. And a post like this shows how that is the case a lot of the time. A lot of the time, right-wingers will come at an issue and we'll say, no, that's not the way to do it. This is the way to do it. Well, look at how these left-wing people are coming at these issues. You don't care about these things at all if you don't agree with our exact way of dealing with the issue. It's extremely arrogant, and we'll see that more clearly depicted later here on these slides. So if pro-life people are okay with comprehensive sex ed, they're surely okay with making sure everyone has access to contraceptives, yes? Once again, we must pretend to be surprised. So in 2020, the Supreme Court upheld Trump's regulation that allowed employers to opt out of birth control coverage for their employees. This is one of those crazy left-wing things, kind of like voter IDs are racist because, minorities are so poor and dumb and helpless that they can't get IDs. It's the bigotry of low expectations, right? So obviously, I believe anyone's able to get an ID, and we're not discriminating against any certain class by requiring an ID for voting, just like lots of other things. Well, same thing here. The thought that if you don't mandate people provide for a certain level of birth control coverage, that people will then have no access to it is absurd. Condoms aren't insanely expensive. And other forms of birth control, if people want them, people should be responsible for paying for them. Everyone in this society just thinks that everything should be given to them that they want. There's no personal responsibility. Everybody should just have everything, right? So should everyone just have housing, right? Didn't the communist Russia's constitution have a right to housing? Well, why doesn't everyone have a 10,000 square foot mansion then? Oh no, actually when the government gives everyone a universal right to housing, you get put in coffin-sized apartments in a concrete block tower that looks like trash, right? So first of all, leftists, if you get your way and government starts giving everything to everyone, you're not going to like what you're being given, right? The only reason you like what you're given some of the time now is, despite all the government overreach, we still have a relatively free society that's prosperous, and this prosperous free market society, the government can be a parasite of, and then take from it to give decent things to people. But going this way more and more is not appropriate. If people want birth control, they can pay for it. I don't want people to not have access to it just because I don't want the government to pay for it, especially when they loop into birth control abortion. Abortion is a form of birth control to these people. So you want my tax dollars to go towards something that I view as murder. I think abortion is murder. That's a living human. It has DNA distinct from the mother and father. And if you don't do any sort of intervention, if you let nature run its course, a baby will be born. That is where things are headed. And that's why conception, by the way, is the logical point for the start of life. Before conception, actions must be taken to cause life to come into existence. Otherwise, if you just let nature run its course, no further life will come into existence. Conception has to happen first. But then once you have conception, the natural course of things is the baby will be born. There's no other inflection point where those two things are true. It's the clear moment we have a new life. It's in the mom. It's in her body. It's dependent upon her, but it is a new life. So on May 29th, 2021, Texas Governor Greg Abbott tweeted, "In Texas, we always lead the way to protect the unborn. Pro-life," as he signed, #pro-life, as he signed into law one of the most extreme abortion bans in the country. So they're complaining about how early this heartbeats can be detected, so that, the woman might not even know she's pregnant till week 7. And then all of a sudden she wants to get an abortion, but you can already detect the heartbeat, so she never had a chance to get the abortion. Well, whose fault is that? That is the woman's fault. She might not have known, but she was having sex. And once again, people don't want to take responsibility or have responsibility for anything. If you're going to have sex, you need to be aware, even if you're taking medicine, birth control, using condoms, whatever, there is a chance you get pregnant. Unless you have like your tubes tied, the thought that you can have sex with no chance of maybe needing, I don't even want to say need an abortion, but in a situation where someone would want to get an abortion, would want to kill the baby to not have it, it's a part of sex. So if you're going to engage in that activity, you need to know what you're getting into. So it's a woman's fault, not this bill's fault. And then the bill makes no exceptions for cases of incest or rape. So if someone was truly pro-life and not simply anti-abortion, they would recognize the cruelty of forcing a victim of rape or incest to carry an unwanted fetus as a result of that trauma. No, that's not true. If I'm truly pro-life, I understand that the living fetus, the living human unborn baby, is still human life and should be protected. None of us are responsible for the circumstances under which we're born. I am thankful to God I was born to a married set of parents who consensually had sex. They wanted to have another kid, right? Other people are born into other situations. And I'm not better for being born in the stable situation I was born into. And other people who are born into tough situations are not responsible for that. So we don't just kill the baby, the unborn baby, because it was a product of rape. It's still human life. And once again, the mom can put it up for adoption and not raise, her rapist's child, right? But here the left is saying, you're so cruel. You're forcing that woman who's probably suffering PTSD from being raped to carry the child to term and give birth to it. Why should she have to do that? And I would ask this, why would the woman not be willing to do that for another life? Pregnancy is 9 months. The average life expectancy in America is 75 years. So you're going to go through 9 months. I'm not going to say it's not hard. I'm not going to say it's not going to be emotionally traumatic to have this baby in you that this rapist put in you, this evil, despicable scumbag of a man. I'm not saying that wouldn't be difficult. But is it not honorable for the woman to make that sacrifice for that life? Because when that person is born, and if they're adopted by a living family, that person's not evil. That person's not worthy of death. Think if that was the circumstance that you were brought into this world. Would you want your mom to have aborted you and you not exist? If people are honest, most leftists would say, yeah, just to, score political points, because who cares about the truth? But if we're going to be honest, no, we wouldn't want to be aborted. We'd want our chance at lives. So, and that's another thing where it's like this culture, no one should ever be inconvenienced. Sometimes the right thing is to be inconvenienced, is to have to make a sacrifice. JFK said, it's not what your country can do for you, it's what you can do for your country. And the whole country loved that quote. Well, how about it's what the woman can do for another life? She can go through 9 months, and I'm not saying the emotional pain doesn't go on for longer than that, but instead of getting an abortion right away, she can give birth and then put the baby up for adoption, and that's an entire 75 years of human life that's now going to get experienced on this earth because of her sacrifice. Praise to that woman. Should she not be praised for doing that? But the left's not about making honorable decisions and in good character. It's about appealing to people's most base, selfish desires and manipulating people for political power. That's what the left does. Being anti-choice is not pro-life. If you believe that individuals have the right to bodily autonomy, that they choose to do what their bodies is their own business, then guess what? You're pro-choice. The pro-life movement would have you believe that to be pro-choice is to be pro-abortion, but that as much as a lie as being pro-life is actually being pro-life. So I can understand being pro-choice. You could be pro-choice, but hope people don't choose abortion. You could say, look, the woman should have that choice to make, but I don't think it's a good choice for them to make. And in that circumstance, You would be pro-choice and not necessarily be pro-abortion. But here's why that's a bad place to be and why I say no, we should ban it, is because we do have laws in our society, right? Like, we don't have total unrestricted freedom, particularly when you're violating the rights of other people, right? So the rapist can't just rape because he's violating the rights of his victim. Just like you can't just murder another human being. You're violating their right to life. Just like you can't steal. You're violating someone else's right to that property, and you're taking from them. So in particular, our society has laws when someone's free action would infringe upon someone else's freedoms and rights. And this is where it's not just about the woman's body. My body, my choice is an oversimplification. And once again, it's another example of left-wing people using rhetoric to try and control the conversation. It's a nice little soundbite. My body, my choice. You don't have the right to tell me what to do. Well, obviously, if I swung my hand and slit someone's throat with a knife and said, my body, my choice, you'd say, no, you just hurt someone else's body with your action. So you can't just say, my body, my choice. I wanted to swing my arm in that direction, even though I was holding the knife and there was a person right there, right? Well, likewise, there's two bodies. The woman is holding the fetus, the unborn baby. It's an amazing thing, by the way. I have two young girls, and, so my wife's been pregnant and given birth twice, and it's just an amazing thing that the mom houses the baby, and the baby grows and develops inside her and then is born. But it's not just her body. And you know what? Once again, I'll admit, this is something that women have to deal with that men don't, right? Men don't get this burden or privilege, however you want to look at it, right? It's a unique thing women have to deal with. They're the ones who carry the babies. But it's not just them. There is another body. So, being pro-choice is not necessarily being pro-abortion, but it's not a good thing, because in our society, we don't allow 100% freedom is not good, and it's not allowed in any circumstance. The fixation on protecting cells to the moment of conception is what is passed off as pro-life for far too long. One cannot call themselves pro-life while standing on a platform that is very much anti-life at birth. So tell me what right-wing policies end life after birth. Now, you could argue right-wingers not having people get good health care ends lives prematurely because if they had better. Okay, but once again, if you're going to be honest, we think there's other ways to give them better health care. So that's not true. So this is what's so arrogant and presumptuous of this entire post is, if you don't agree with my left-wing politics, if you don't admit that the way I want to do things is the best way to do things, then you're an anti-life person. The only way for you to care about people's lives is for you to agree with left-wing policy. That's what they're saying, which is arrogant, untrue, and false. So once again, and this proves this, how to be pro-life. So you're only really pro-life if you're for gun control, if you are for left-wing policies mandating, access to health care via government versus not how can we give people better access to health care by having better market incentives in place, So left-wing, because people can't do this stuff on themselves. This stuff will never happen without government is the assumption. Protect the earth by advocating for and supporting efforts to curb climate change. So you're not pro-life unless you believe the left's claims about climate change. And you protect the future for those not yet born by advocating for and supporting efforts to eliminate food deserts, provide universal health care to all people, and forever. So in other words, leftism. You must protect the future by being a leftist. And otherwise, and look at this, and then make sure that life is not treated like a privilege. They're the ones making life like it's a privilege. Because it's a privilege if your mom decided not to kill you because she had the right to kill you. You're privileged if your mom chose not to kill you. This is one thing you'll notice about left-wing arguments. If they try and go in depth with them, they're going to be rife with contradictions because they're not built on a solid foundation, a good worldview, a sound belief system and philosophy of universe and human nature and life and God. That's not what leftism is built on. So anything that doesn't have a firm foundation, like think about a building. That condo in Miami that collapsed recently. Why? It had foundation issues. You could go in the parking garage and you could see the signs that there's problems with this building's foundation. One side was falling faster than the other, and those kind of buildings are built on mud. So the poles that go very deep into the ground, the support columns, need to be straight so that the mud on both sides of them is pushing like this, and it holds the whole structure up this way. But when you start to get one side of or one corner of the building dropping, the whole foundation is no longer secure because now instead of just side-to-side pressure on these support columns, there's now vectors of forces that are going vertical. And the building was never designed to have a foundation that way, and the entire thing collapsed and killed people. You have to have a firm foundation, and leftism does not. So ultimately, let's ask ourselves, what is pro-life? Simpler tends to be better in life, right? Keep it simple, stupid. And I'm pro-life because I believe unborn babies are human beings that have the right to life and should be protected. I can say that in one sentence. They needed an entire slide with 4 bullet points to talk about how to be pro-life, and it was all about how to be a leftist. What do you think is the most reasonable definition of pro-life? That being pro-life is leftist, or being pro-life is all humans have the right to life? We all know the answer. So this is gamemanship by them. This is dishonest. This is sneaky. This is propaganda. They know pro-life is a powerful term for us to have because it sounds good, because it is good. You know, we look back 200 years ago, 170 years ago, and we think, how could people be pro-slavery? Well, if you support abortion today, you are the kind of person that would have supported slavery in the past because they're both atrocities that violate human rights. So the left knows pro-life's a powerful term for us to have. And the reason it is because God has written the law into the conscience of all of our hearts. And we know that human beings are unique. We're not just another animal. We're different than the rest of the animals. And our lives are to be cherished. And to have a mom kill a baby in her womb when she was designed to nurture that baby and bring it into this world is a horrible evil and a great tragedy. So I hope this helped with all of you to kind of see this is insane propaganda. They just want to take this powerful term from you, and don't let them. We need to have control of the language, not keep giving it to them. Call yourself pro-life, push back against this nonsense. So thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. You know, we're biggest on Instagram, but of course this is a YouTube video. So if you're not a subscriber here on YouTube, please subscribe. We're trying to grow this platform as well. You know, things like this where I kind of go over maybe a now this video clip, right? That's the kind of thing I'll record my screen with, or someone else's post. To me, it's easier to record my screen and just give commentary. So certain kind of posts are better for Instagram. Other content, YouTube's better for. So we're trying to grow on both platforms. So if you can like this video, subscribe, we'd really appreciate the support. Thanks.